Okay, so the exciting part really too is like, what do we know now, and understand that we'll do to start things off differently next year, and then the other piece are just lingering questions and supports that we need. So in the interest of time, I think my hope is just to kind of list those things, and if you have questions, of course, you can tweet those or just ask them. Um, I think it's important to make sure that we have whiteboards for each table of brainstorming. So essentially, each group is literally like a team. It's their company, it's their business, no matter what we're doing. And they have some type of easel or flexible design, so it allows them to manipulate the easel and work it. And then they can move that easel or that whiteboard anywhere in the classroom. So I think hitting Home Depot and finding a money god somewhere will be awesome, and buy some shower boards so that we have like huge whiteboards that can just do lots of great things for learning in the classroom. Flexible design for multiple seating arrangements, just making sure that we like have the tables that we need, and really kind of trying to advocate for those for this learning piece. Strategic classroom organization that supports numbered flexible seating. And so one of the things that Lindsay and I talked about was, she had this idea of like, I would love to be able to go in and say, okay, today we're going to use seating arrangement 2, and the kids just know then the classroom is going to be arranged a certain way because of what we're doing. And maybe the next day it's seating 3 because of what we need to accomplish. And so thinking through those things and knowing that ahead of time is part of that organization piece. Making sure that grade level expectations are consistent across the board, so we're using the same language and the same expectations just in terms of what's expected when it's time to get down. And when we come back together as a group, how does that work? What should groups look like, sound like, etc. And then that learning reflection journal, that is key. That's going to be our life next year. It's a summative several times a week on how things are going, and it's going to help us know if what we're doing is really most effective and if the kids are getting what they need to out of things. And so that also kind of turns into developing or creating some type of manual for like a how-to to start this year with a bang, where we know there are things that we're going to create that would go in that manual, but the other piece is giving the kids voice and choice in how things should work, and kind of developing our own manual and constitution about things in the classroom. And I think including a copy of questions for reflection to encourage them to reflection, and then that should just kind of become a part of how they think, but giving them a place to start would be really important for planning purposes. One of the things I really like the idea of too is asking kids like, what do you truly want to learn about? And so it's kind of like, if you have a really deep interest in World War I, how can you take that deep interest and show us all of the skills you need to know in 8th grade just through even your own interests? And so that might be kind of cool. I'm a theme-based girl, and I love having themes, and I liked the idea of boot camp. I almost thought about boot camp traditionally has 10 different levels that you go through. And so I'm thinking, how can a 0-week reception work, and then the next step being fall in, and the next step direction, and the next step endurance, and then marksmanship and trials and camaraderie and combat skill development, victory forge, and then almost like a graduation celebration type of thing. So it's like, do those steps occur with everything we do, or are those steps that can work throughout the year? I don't know. And then having kids work through and earn ranks. And so you have like a second lieutenant, a first lieutenant, all the way up to a major, a general, which is, that accomplishment of being successful. So I think truly this idea of voice and choice is your classroom becomes a simulation. It's a simulation of what learning should look like. And so I think by selecting a theme and just making it be as real life of an experience as we can every day these kids come in, I think we're going to get a lot more bang for our buck. Lingering questions and supports that are needed. I feel like we just have to really talk openly and honestly with our colleagues about how can we truly make this work. Are you really committed? And if you are, like what do we know it's going to take? And making sure that we're remembering to rely on our colleagues for expertise if you have a fellow ELA person. I mean, I feel like I'm indebted tremendously to Lindsay, and I just appreciate knowing that I can bounce any crazy idea off of her and I'll get an honest amount of feedback back. And then, how can we make sure that kids are constantly doing the reflection piece and seeing and learning the value in that? And finding, like, how do we find the right lessons and the right words and the right language to use to make sure that the kids are really, it's about you teaching other people. It's about you teaching us. And so those are the biggest pieces for me. And in a perfect world, I think it would be really cool if Lindsay and I could just take over the library Is that possible? And I know we're structured and set up in pods, but do they really have to be that way? You know, where I can capitalize on Lindsay's strengths, you know, and vice versa. And can our kids just be fluid constantly? If the goal is mastery towards these standards, I think it just needs to look messy, and it means that kids are going to be all over the place. So can that work in our system?